Welcome.
Hi, I'm very happy to be here today and to present one of CGL's main project that has been going on for the past 8 years or so, and even started earlier with a project that happened at our sister institute, Köln International School of Design. So today I will be talking about learning in mixed reality environments, yes, and I will do so in presenting the design methodology and also our experiences in creating a game called Porta Pretoria CCAA. So this game has been developed in collaboration with the University of Cologne, with the historic department, because the game Porta Pretoria is focusing on teaching kids coming to Cologne about the Roman history on site. So, as I mentioned, the project started out in a very early phase, already in 2009, when we developed the rough idea of creating an augmented reality game within Cologne's cityscape. And at that time, I'm sure most of you remember, augmented reality technology was really bulky. I mean, our colleagues from the Fraunhofer Institute, which is close by, 1 year before we started our project, they were running around with heavy backpacks with GPS in it and having really basic functionality on mobile devices. So it looked a little bit like walking as an astronaut in the cityscape. But in 2009, technology shifted a little bit, and we were able to develop a first rough technical prototype within a project which was called a mobile gaming middleware. So we developed a prototype where it was actually possible to visualize objects, and in our particular case, really ancient buildings within the cityscape. From there on, we kept on developing. Usually between conceptual development of a game, which was completely detached from the technological development, because we were sure at that time technology isn't as far as we need it to be to provide the full experience that we have in mind. So the Histogo project ended after 3 years, and after a little break we looked for further funding, while in the meantime the augmented reality frameworks for mobile had developed to that extent that we needed it to be at that time. And the industry and marketing agencies all over the world had picked on this hot topic of augmented reality, which was at that point mere eye candy. I mean, it was this pure aha moment that you could visualize something blended into the real space. And then after this huge hype, of course, it started vanishing again while we kept on developing, because we knew these things need time, even if they are in the public eye only visible for a moment and then seem doomed for all eternity again. From experience in media studies, you know, okay, if there's something to it, it will come up again. And I know with our project, we were very sure that we would fill a very important gap in education on site. So what we developed in the past 4 years since we picked back up on the project is a location-based multiplayer game, which really uses the audiovisual elements to teleport students back in time. And what is really important is that it's cooperative. So what happens in this game scenario is that we teleport groups of 3 into a different time in the Cologne area of the Roman culture. At the moment, it's all throughout the 1st century of Roman Cologne. And we decided for teams of 3 because we wanted to have a really good dynamic in interchanging information, puzzling elements together while not having much guidance by the game and not much outside information, the classic textbook information that you know from usually teaching history. What's also very important is that it's a first-hand experience, that the game really aims at having players collect things throughout the cityscape, investigating what these objects or what these buildings in the past might have meant, and then using this joint intel to proceed throughout the game. The core of our augmented reality approach is a model that had been previously developed by the Köln International School of Design in association with several partners. And I'm quickly going to show you how this model looks like. Yeah, I wanted to show you how this looks like, if I could. Oh, come on. Okay, so then it's a still frame. It should have been a zoom in on it, but anyway, I can work with that. So it's really a full-scale model, a reconstruction of the Roman city center, with a lot of assumptions, of course. But these assumptions are scientifically proved, and so this model was co-developed with the archaeological department of the University of Cologne and with the Roman History Museum in Cologne. So there were a lot of parties involved that made sure that this model is absolute accurate, and this model constantly evolves. So that's a very important aspect when you develop with architecture that constantly evolves. That becomes now very important when further developing the game. So we have a very vivid model that has a mapping that has to relate to the Cologne locations, to the actual locations, because we draw from the actual point where players are positioned in the cityscape. We then merge their actual current position with the information we have from the model from the past, and have this effect that the past merges with the present, so you can really see how the cityscape looks around you, jumping back in time. So that was very important for us, and this is really the foundation of making this project possible, that we were able to use this model and continue using it when we transform it in a new engine, because back then it was developed on a custom engine, and we are transforming it so it can be used in the future. Oh, no. We skipped that. So a little bit our aim when we started developing this project. I just want to push things forward. This is probably why this happened. So this is the current situation, of course. I don't know how many of you enjoyed history class back at school. I didn't. Because it wasn't vivid. So this aim of history teachers of providing relevance and this kind of understanding, well, why this is relevant to you and what this is important for your future life, certainly works with the near past. But in a lot of cases, it doesn't work when you jump back to something like the Roman culture, where it's sometimes not even stories. You read sources, and as a young kid or young adult, you don't necessarily relate to these stories. So our aim was to really create an angle using the advantage of being on site, being in the real cityscape, and using storytelling, on the other hand, to have players experience what it must have been living in the Roman Cologne. So it's a time travel scenario, basically, that we invented, which complements these two angles. Angle number one, textbook studies at school, and angle number two, a traditional visit on site with a guide, and visiting a museum with dead objects. And we tackled this idea of providing something in between. When you come to Cologne, as a starting point for your studies. So the intention of this game is really to be the introduction, to open a vessel for students where they then can attach all the traditional learning content into. So building with this game this general idea of the scale of the city, of how it might have looked like, how different people in different societies throughout that time might have interacted, might be, and this is our thesis, a very good introduction to then be more fascinated and tie in other contents. So with this idea in mind, I'm going to show you a short trailer, and I hope the sound is going to work now. I think it should, about the game, and I will explain a little bit about it after that. Please.
Hallo. Hallo? Ist da irgendjemand? Mein Name ist Julia Kaiser. Ich bin in der Vergangenheit. Ich hoffe, meine Nachricht erreicht irgendjemanden.
Okay. So what you've just seen is the latest, really complete prototype that we tested out last summer. So we are currently in another technical phase, which I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail in a minute. But this model and this vertical slice that we tried to produce last summer really aimed at exploring and investigating in how far this gaming experience could really make fun. Because our main aim, of course, in this project was to create a real game. And the approach was really to start from not what the teachers want, not what the accuracy of the historic department of the museum that we are collaborating with wants, but really taking this on our own and co-developing with students on the basis of what draws their attention, what game dynamics are really fascinating for them, and then taking it the other way around and really working on the accuracy of the content. What we don't have is this kind of learning control of progress as an external method, because we believe that progressing in the game and really being able to master the different levels and missions is proof enough that the kids really understand what they should have been exploring in the game. So what's currently existing is a framework, and we are further developing this framework, a framework that is the meta-narrative. It's the travel back in time story, which is guided by this persona, the Agrippina persona, which sends the players through a portal for each unconnected episode. And for us, it was very important to have single episodes that stand on their own, that can be connected to a learning experience that can be scaled. So you could go into the app in the future and decide, okay, I want to have a 60-minute experience with a focus on social life in Cologne. And then the game would tailor you this kind of experience based on a number of different missions that are within this gaming experiences. So the different missions will be categorized into thematic content, but also into duration. So it's really possible to play this in a very quick fashion and then go into the museum or explore the city in a different way, or to really have a full early noon and having a very long experience with that. So these missions, each mission contains certain events, which are in this case, in the first case, in the prototype that we developed, it's the task of one player who has been transported in the first century to deliver a certain delicatessen to the emperor. And not knowing what the favorite delicatessen of the emperor is, the players have to find their way to the old harbor and investigate the different delicatessen that are provided there. So they learn about what were the traded goods in the harbor at that time, and they can really interact with NPC players, which will be positioned in this specific scene to find out what the possible delicatessen could be. And there's no right or wrong, so the mission can end in two different ways. In this case, for example, they can decide for one vessel. Well, they can only smell and see the color of the elements, but they can send it back in time, and the other players can investigate this vessel with their specific time tools. So one player in the past, one in the current time, and one in the future who has a supercomputer and can uncode every kind of written or spoken language. So it's a process that all three have to work together to find out which vessel could be the one that they should go for. And if they shortcut it, for example, and make an educated guess and decide for the vessel that contains the poison, the outcome of this project is that they get a little bit of a story snippet how Agrippina is most likely responsible for the poisoning of 3 of her 4 husbands. So even if they fail in their mission, they don't fail. It's always an outcome that really relates to a moment of time. Since I've been talking about the 3 different players, so one in the past, one today, and one in the future, all these players have specific skills, and they can always trade skills. They have there's an in-game currency where you can gain more money, the sesterzen, the contemporary currency of the Roman time. And you can gain this by answering questions that are also positioned in space throughout your route. So while you are walking through the Cologne cityscape, the game keeps on going. So you don't only have hotspots where you are supposed to be, but throughout your walking through the cityscape, you are on duty. You have to find these augmented reality markers, which are a bit similar to the Pokemon Go dynamics, of course. And these markers are quiz questions. And if you answer a question right, which is of course related to the Roman Cologne, you gain more in-game currency, and then the dynamic and your interaction in the following mission might be easier. So 3 players in 3 different time episodes, and each of them has a very appealing skill that they can provide to this. So the player in the future sees these question markers, these currency markers in space. The player in the past, of course, sees the past and can communicate with the other players what they see. And the person from today can really excavate elements underneath the earth. So there's a situation where you have to walk the Altarmarkt, which is the former harbor of Roman Cologne, and you can use your phone and excavate elements of a vase that are hidden there and puzzle them together with the help of your mates. So these interconnected dynamics of then collecting, combining, and uncoding really foster communication among the students. And that was very important for us because we didn't want the experience of having this phone in front of you and not talking to your mates. The key factor when we decided, okay, we make a 3 players collaborative game was this is just a trigger for them to discuss and also make these kind of guesses what they have discovered and how to proceed further with it. And when we did our tests last summer, we were really thrilled. This worked beyond our expectations, to be honest, because we thought, okay, every player takes their single role very seriously, and they stick to their character, and then they exchange intel. But what they also did, they traded their phones. They let the other person look on their phone, and really, when they didn't understand something, they let the other people have a look, and they really combined things. So it was a constant exchange and of opinions, and we could listen to them while they were discussing on the radio, and they made up fantastic stories which weren't necessarily true, but made up these big questions about the Roman culture, which were then kind of funneled and answered throughout the progression of the game. So this kind of dynamic of encouraging dialogue instead of having single players walk with the phone in their hand through their game is kind of the success story that we will keep on fostering, where we will keep on developing the project. Future perspective for this. We are a university, so we are not a game publisher. But our aim anyway is to create until next April, within the framework of the current funding, to create a framework for this game where we will have all the basic functionalities like the accessibility of the entire model, the location detection, and also the game dynamics like this augmented reality puzzle, which is our main dynamic. And we will make 3 example episodes, so there's really a progression from one station in Cologne to the next highlight, so that we can demo this game. And the future goal is to have a license for this framework where third parties like CGL students or graduates might develop single episodes that are completely independent from the previous episodes, but use the Porta Praetoria framework and will be published throughout the framework. So it's the idea of having a growing episodic series where also third parties like the museum could come in 1 or 2 years and say, okay, we have an interest of providing the public with this specific topic, and we need a game developer who can create something for this topic using the Porta Praetoria framework. That way we are not this way the project isn't lost, which happens a lot of time with these research projects at universities where there are a lot of loose ends, but this is purposely developed with a loose end so that people can adapt their content into it using what we've created from the start and growing this thing in the future. Thank you.